Hello and welcome to the Brush and Bolt Gun. Today I'm going to look at edge highlighting your models. Edge highlighting your models is a particular technique that is used to make your model look as if the light is catching the edge of the model and giving it a more three-dimensional look. So here I have two models from my last video on how to shade your models. These are Primaris Space Marine Reavers, and I'm going to show you how to edge highlight them. So this one on the right hand side here has been previously shaded, so it already looks like there's some depth to the model, but the light is only catching it in a natural way, and the more colours I put on that model, the more likely it is to look flat. So I want to make sure that each individual colour catches some of the light and looks a bit more impressive. So what I'll do is I'll edge highlight this, and this is because there are nice flat edges on the model that I can run the paintbrush along. So if we look at it, we can look around here, and places like the shoulder pad here will be nice and easy to edge highlight, around the bottom of these exhaust vents on the backpack, and around the bottom of the feet here on the heel. They'll all be nice areas to highlight, and that will emulate the light catching the model and will make it look a lot more alive and impressive. There are a few different methods of highlighting your model, one of which is dry brushing, which is a method of taking the paint off the brush and gently brushing it across the model so that the lighter shade catches the edges of the model. That's quite an easy way, and we'll be looking at that in a future video, but for today I want to talk about edge highlighting, and this is a little bit more advanced, but there's a few tips I can show you to make it easier. So again, back to the model, we can see there are only a few blue surfaces on here, so there's no point edge highlighting these bits of webbing, the scabbard for his combat knife, or the bolt pistol. So what I'm going to do is get this Citadel Calf Blue. You'll see that my pot's a little bit worse for wear, and I'll give this a good shake, make sure the paint inside is nicely mixed before I start putting it on my palette. And if I just open it here, you can see that the paint is quite consistent there, but very thick. So I get my brush, and for this I'm using a Winsor & Newton Series 7 number 1. Again, this is the paintbrush that I tend to use for everything. It's got a nice point on it. And I'll get some of the paint and put this on the palette. So for now, just get a rough bit out of the lid there, doesn't matter how much I get. And I'll get some water and I'll just thin that down. So we want that to be a nice, almost watery consistency. We don't want it to be too thin, because then it will run, and we want it to stay on the model where we put it. Put a little bit more water, we can make sure that's nice, consistent. I'll wash the brush so that there's not too much paint on the brush, and get some of this paint back on the brush here. So what you might be tempted to do with edge highlighting is try and use the point on the edge of the model, and this is quite hard to do. If I just show you here, trying to paint along a straight line might take one or two goes. I tend to do this brushing motion and move the brush closer until it just about touches the surface, and you can see there's a little bit of the lighter shade on that belt buckle, which emulates the light catching it. An easier way I find of edge highlighting is to get some brush on the paint like this. Again, not too much, I might just take a little bit off there, and find a hard surface like the back of his leg here, and now I can just run the edge of the brush across there. And so by using the natural line and the brush, that's actually getting paint on it. So I'm not trying to draw a straight line, I'm using the edge of the model to catch the paint as it goes. And there we go, we have two different ways of edge highlighting. So it's really quite that simple. The only thing with edge highlighting is it can take a little bit longer than something like dry brushing, but it can look really impressive in the end. So I'm going to go ahead and paint the rest of this model, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Okay, so that took me about 15 minutes for that one model, which is probably a little bit long, but I was trying to be a bit more careful for the video, and I would probably use a slightly smaller brush if I were doing this myself, but I just wanted to demonstrate that you don't need a tiny brush to do detail if you use it correctly. So if we take a close look at the model, you can now see that all of the edges have been coated in a slightly lighter shade of blue. Okay. Now, not every surface, as I said, but most of them, mainly the ones that catch the light or where there's a really nice solid edge that you can put paint onto. And what this does is it shows the light catching the armour and makes it look a little bit more alive. Okay, if we compare this to a plain Macragge blue model, you can see that it just looks a lot better. Looks more like armour, and it gives it more depth, especially with the shading. Don't necessarily need to do the shading for this. Either stage adds a lot more to the model, depends on what you want to do, but I tend to do both. And if there's any unevenness around the model, you can always go back over with your base colour, in this case that would be Macragge blue, and just tidy up those lines. As you can see on my version here, there are a few untidy lines around the shoulder pad, around the wrist, and so on. And I'll probably go back over those with some Macragge blue just to make them look a little bit neater. Hopefully this shows you how edge highlighting can help a model look a lot more detailed, and hopefully this video has been useful for you. If you've got any questions or comments, please add them below, and don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you like the video, and please subscribe for our future content.